Okay, welcome back to episode 23, if I recall correctly, or 22, either way. This episode is going to be mostly just focused on showing some mechanics now that the team is fully made up. Just showing some reasons why I'm doing stuff. There's going to be a bit of math involved in this, but I'm going to try to explain it very simply for those who aren't necessarily very good at math, so that you understand properly what I'm saying or how I'm explaining this thing. Let's go first, in order to get the math done, into our armors. So I said early on that I always take 3% guard, and I also said that I'm always taking my 3% critical on my armors in terms of the layer. I still see in Discord at times and in Steam people talking about making the better layers and saying that the better layers cost white leather, so you're going to need to go through Phantom Swarms in order to get the better layers. This is completely false. These are not better layers. These are all patently worse layers. There's only some of them may be better at very low level. So for example, reinforced layer, the stag, may be better at very low level. Level 2, if you could craft it early, if this was actually the first one to craft, it would be better because you would be using it more often. And then they could move the trackers reinforced at 3% guard into requiring white leather. Otherwise, it's not better. 3% guard is always a better option than getting armor, unless you have very, very little armor that's actually there. Just to explain this whole thing. So at 50% guard, the armor of a unit is effectively twice as strong as it was before, because you are actually mitigating half of the damage that's coming in. So from 0 to 50%, you're working up towards being double, right? At 66% guard, so just 2% over this, approximately 66% guard, you're at 2/3. So you're reducing it by 2/3. You are effectively taking away 2/3 of the damage. So your armor at 66% guard is actually 3 times as good as it would normally be, because it would take 3 times as many hits in order to reach the same amount of damage being dealt. This means that going from 0 to 50 obviously is working from 1 to 2. So working from being normal armor to being armor that is twice as strong at 50% guard. And then at 66% guard, the armor is 3 times as strong. You're only requiring an extra 16%, and effectively at 75% guard, if this is ever available to a player, at 75% guard, your armor is 4 times as strong as it was normally. And of course, at 100% guard, your armor is actually infinitely more strong because you mitigate all the damage that's being dealt. So the higher percentage that you were able to reach, and it's not a completely linear. I mean, it's linear within the framework of percentages, but it's a lot of 3% is actually quite a bit more. And the only layer that you would be able to say might possibly would be your armor plus 4 guard plus 2%. So you're losing out on 2% guard in order to gain an extra 8 armor. But that extra 8 armor, that's not equivalent. That there's no. It looks like it's similar because you're saying, well, 3% of 286 or 329 in this case. 3% of 329, which would be 9 technically, or 2% actually. 2% of 329, which would be about 6 or 7. 6 or 7 is less than 8 extra armor, but it's not. It isn't. It's patently not. 3% guard is the best thing that you can put on any unit that is a tank unit, and it works in a very similar fashion for dealing crits, because at 50% crit, you're dealing crit. One of every 2 hits that you're doing is dealing a crit. So after playing this for a while with unstable oil on, as I have, um, I believe that having sharpening oil is actually better. There is a chance that I'm going to be dealing a crit at like 35%. So every time I maelstrom into a pack that has at least 3 units in it, I can count on at least one critical hit per unit being dealt out. What I mean by that is that if he has 3 units in his range for cutting maelstrom, he'll be hitting all 3 of them at the same time with the swing, and he will be swinging 3 times because it triggers for every unit. So it attacks each unit, attacks once for each unit. So if there's 3 units, you're attacking 3 times, and you're hitting all 3 units 3 times. Each unit has a 35% chance of being a crit hit on each one of those hits. So you're likely to be dealing out 3 crit hits on those spins, and if you kill one, you're going to be attacking again for another chance to deal out the crit. Of course, one of them is dead, so that's only 2 units now. But having the unit almost at 50% for the moment has been, or at least in the past, was a lot more beneficial than the chance of getting an AOO. First of all, because when you're doing cutting maelstrom, you don't have a lot of units around you or close enough. It's unlikely that you're going to have even 2 of the 3 units that would be surrounding you, and if you have 4 units, well, even less likely. But even 2 of the 3 units, more than likely you're going to have only one of them. You may have 2 of them that are there, and the AO doesn't seem to proc with nearly enough consistency for the damage to outweigh if I was doing a crit. Now we got to remember that if I'm doing a crit, I'm critting at 160%, right, with him. So he's got a 70% right now, and I've got Old Man, I've got Hercules, and I've got Tishtrias, who I'm going to rename. I'll explain naming later on. But so I've got these three guys who are each adding the looting experience onto it for 30%. So when he deals a crit, that's an extra 90%. So he's dealing it at 160%. Pretty much most of my units are dealing it at 160%. Not these guys, obviously. But even this Kegal's at 51, so about 140% that he's dealing out. Anyway, my melee units at least are almost all at 160, but so it's the 90% plus the 70%. So yeah, the crit in and of itself, if I'm able to get more crits out, because right now I'm dealing 1 crit every 3, approximately 1 crit every 3 hits. If I'm dealing 1 crit every 2 hits out of 9 hits, that's 4 to 5 crits instead of just doing 3 crits. And that damage, the damage being applied, is absolutely enormous because, as you can see, that 82 multiplied, you're at like, multiplied by 2.6, you're at almost, you're at 200 and a bit over 200, which could be even higher, depending. But so as I said, the 3% to crit and the 3% to guard is better than anything that you can make. It would be similar, I suppose, to here you're either Dex 2% crit hit plus 2 Dex, or you're plus 4 armor plus 2% guard. It's similar, but it doesn't quite mean it, right? The 3% is still better. 3% is easier to build, easier to make, easier to stack up things for, because it's all your basic stuff. So personally, these I find are useless. I don't really understand why they put them in at these levels instead of doing the switch, which might seem counterintuitively like it's not right. That having plus 2 Dex plus 2% crit hit would be better. But unless that Dex is specifically raising your crit hit by 1 each time, which is impossible because both layers can't do it, so you would still be 1% crit hit under. I guess 1% crit hit, maybe perhaps the damage that's being dealt on the decks. It depends on where your crit hit is at, really. But for the most part, I think the best ones are just to have these guys, and just because the higher they are, the more benefit they have, right? So obviously, a 10% guard going to 13% guard is not that much. That's a very small increase, but going from 60% to 63% is a lot higher. At 60% anyway, you're at 2.5 times your armor. So, and then at 66%, you're at 3 times your armor. So that 6% is actually worth a full half of that armor. So if the 6% is worth half of the armor, then the 3% is worth 1/4 of the armor. It's not quite that linear in terms of the increase, but it's almost that linear in terms of the increase. So at 64%, it's huge. 61 to 64 is more than just 3% of the armor. It's equivalent to a lot higher. Anyway, I hope I explained that properly so that you understand that these two are actually the two best that you can get of any of them, and you can just focus on these guys, get these two, as I've explained in my Let's Play how to get them, and never make anything else. As you can see, I don't even make them. I haven't even bothered making them, and I have, as we can see from here, when I go into my power and might, I have the enhanced layers. I have 56 layers made, and that's just making layers for those which are only those ones. I think I made maybe one or two of the others, perhaps not even. So just throughout the course of the game, you are actually going to be making 50 layers, depending on the size of your team, of course, and what you're doing. But I've already got the 50 layers, so now whenever I make a new armor or I find a new armor that I want, it doesn't matter because I can just take the layers out and it won't harm me. I can put the layers right back in, you see? So I can take them out now and put them back in. Before, when you would take them out, they would be destroyed. Now, because I've made 50 layers, I can take them out and put them right back in. So that was about that. This is the camp setup. So I like to keep everybody close. As I explained in the beginning, I like to keep everybody close in order to increase the possibility of close rest interactions. Now that I've got the more units in, my five level 11 normal guys, plus these guys who are my wrongdoers, my extra level wrongdoers. The team is actually quite big, so it makes for a big double line, and I mixed it up a bit. I moved it around a bit so that I could actually get more people close together and whatever, at least within a certain level of proximity to each other. For the wrongdoers, these two wrongdoers, I keep my naming conventions. For example, I name Sin. I just name him Sin. It's a simple one. It's the one that uses the poignard. She was the witch. She doesn't have a legendary weapon. I just name her Sin, so she's easy to find in that case. This is the name of a mythical mace user. Hercules obviously is the name of a mythical mace user, and the Infinitely Old Man is also the name of a mythical or novelized mace user. I find Old Man is easy to remember because it's Old Man. This one I'm probably going to change because it's just... first of all, I can't really pronounce it properly. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing it properly. It's saying Tishtrias, and I'm just not liking it. I've played it for a while now, and I'm not finding it properly and knowing exactly what the unit is and whatever to use it quickly. So it's not a quick one to have. Hercules is obviously an easy one to have. The rest of them are pretty easy. Perun, who is from Scandinavian, Slavic, I believe Finland, perhaps, but it's basically Thor, but from another pantheon that is very similar to the Nordic pantheon. And then the other ones were just named from whatever weapon or whoever used the weapon before, except for Druce. Druce is also a novelized user of a two-handed axe, and he's pretty simple to remember. I mean, you could keep him as Taurus also, I suppose, because Taurus is always his name, so it's similarly easy to remember. And Lucilla, of course, the weapon that it actually is. But these guys are special because they actually have a full skill tree. There are only, so far as I know, somebody might find one, others someday somewhere, but I don't think so. And I'm not the one who found these. Credit to whoever was on Discord who told us about this. But during the last mission in Tiltrin, regardless of the side you choose, but in this case I chose to side with the village just to make sure, because the refugees are usually bandits, but it's not the case. It is the case, but at the same time it isn't the case. So there will always be at least one wrongdoer engaged in combat, almost dead at the start of the last mission. The last mission has quite a few units who are kind of like reinforcement units. So any reinforcement units will have a skill tree to them. A skill tree that is not a full skill tree. What you're missing is a specialization. So his specialization is actually wrongdoer, and the wrongdoer specialization comes through his passive of looting experience. So any captured units that have skill trees are usually from being reinforcement units, and they will be missing their specialization. This line right here, as you can see on these guys, it's level 3 their specialization. So it's the level 2 or level 3 skill, but they have their VP gain. They have the level 5. They have the level 8. They'll get the level 12. But what they don't have is their spec into this right here, Destroyer, Vanguard, or Smasher, because he's the wrongdoer spec. So, which has nothing, but technically has the passive at level 3. So they don't get the weakening blow, but they're still amazing in the sense that you can still build them into a temperance. Temperance is actually the level 8 skill that I use on my brutes. I used to use Guard Breaker, which upgraded will give 100%. You ignore 100% of the guard when you're attacking people. It's definitely a great skill, but I find it less practical than Temperance for multiple reasons, which I'll explain right now. And one-on-one is also a great skill. The 3 level 8 skills are actually really great skills depending on the use. So if I were to use a two-handed user, I would probably go with the Guard Breaker just to get through guard more often so that I can proc the Armor Breaker. So Armor Breaker into Guard Breaker. But with these guys, Cruelty, because I don't have my spec into Weakening Blow, although Cruelty could still use with Weakening Blow. It could still be practical. So Cruelty, which damage and critical hit increase by 20% against units with at least 1 debuff. So he gets up to 45%. It's a huge increase. In return, they deal 20% damage to this unit, which means that I can, since I don't have my Weakening Blow, I will always be wanting to start with the taunt. You taunt into him, and then you disengage, which is the first attack on the Temperance. As you can see, so damage taken to the next attack reduced by 70% from the deflection. And after taking 2 attacks, this unit gains deflection and riposte. So you get into the taunt, weakening the unit, disengage, and then you smack them up with a pernicious engagement. And the Cruelty will be added on, and then Temperance, so you can disengage immediately afterwards and pull out a Temperance riposte. Now, depending on how lucky you are with the Unstable Oil, if you get the Unstable Oil on the Pernicious Engagement, the Pernicious Engagement itself that applies a fragility onto the unit and then disengaging, you're getting an AOO anyway, but you could get 2 AOOs on it, depending. That means that these units are still capable of killing one unit on their turn, which he is not capable of doing, obviously, with his nothing. They don't have Oath of Cowards, which means that they don't deal as much damage to engage units, but you're using them as tanks anyway, so you want them to be engaging with the pernicious engagement, especially. You want them to be engaging into units to fragility them. At least you're getting the fragility. At least you could be ending on a fragility. So depending on whether you think you would be able to kill the unit through disengaging off of the pernicious into a fragility, into an AOO from repost, or not, or that it could reduce it enough that you could get the wrath off of them too. It's all up to you, but this is it makes for a very good combo when you can actually get them. And so these units, as I said, are available in Tiltron during the last mission, which will be either here or at the Haven, depending on which one you chose. And they are the two, or the one or the two, they are the units that are almost dead. It's only the wrongdoers that are almost dead. You can save right before the battle and reload that in order to get the wrongdoers at, some decent willpower. I myself had them at 12 and 15. But it's also a good idea to save before going in, just because you can load into a game where there's only one wrongdoer who is actually engaged and almost dead. So you would miss out on, your second wrongdoer potentially, because it's only those wrongdoers that are almost dead. You want to have units close to them and then rush them immediately, so that you capture them pretty much right away. You'd even want to be taking hits in order to capture them. So it might be preferable for you to side with the Haven and to actually attack it in Stromcap. Because when you side with the village, you meet the Haven, and the Haven has a hoodlum as its leader, which means that they have critical hit, 100% chance to critical hit when they attack you. And you, in siding with the village, will have an archer as your leader. So you've already got inspiration from the start. You don't actually need your Ovation guy to inspire anybody, because everybody already has Ovation, because it's an archer as the leader unit in this one. And if you were to side with the Haven instead and destroy the village itself, or your enemies, would have inspiration as their leader buff, and you would have 100% chance to critical hit as your leader buff. So depending on what the attack order is, you can go and kill the leader and then go and capture the guys, or you have to capture the guys right away, or whatever it is. I mean, you determine that at the time, whatever your situation is, you would be able to best choose that, assumedly. So. And we can look at titles also. The Pig's Bane, the Wolf Tanner, Nimble Elbow, Bulwark, Miser, Cross-Eyed, the Deft, and that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's it for the ones that I have currently. The Pig's Bane requires you to kill 10 pigs in a battle. It's actually a bit of a bitch to get, just because you have to slow down everything. You have to leave units alive for your units to go after. So a good way is just to get everything onto one side, or most of your units in one area, kill a few of the pigs, the boars, and run everybody away, and just have the guy that you want to be killing just killing them one after the other. It takes a few rounds and whatever. The Wolf Tanner is the same thing. You need to kill 10 wolves with one unit in one battle. So both of them 10 boars in one unit with one unit in one battle, and 10 wolves with one unit in one battle to get it. The Nimble Elbow is 10 sleeps with alcohol. So if you used alcohol during 10 sleeps, one of your units is going to get the Nimble Elbow. I do not suggest using beer or wines or anything like that. because there's a good chance that using those will proc a drunkard on one of your units before you hit Nimble Elbow, and then you'll want to be healing drunkard. Although drunkard can also proc an aptitude point gain for the first time you get a drunkard in your team. You can get an aptitude point from a rest interaction. Of course, all that is RNG in terms of whether it'll proc or not. But the Nimble Elbow will proc. A good way to get the Nimble Elbow is to use the beer-infused wolf ribs, the ones that I had accumulated before. That's how I got it in the first place. You just accumulate 10 of them, and then you use them 10 rests in a row. You use one of those, and one of your guys is going to get the Nimble Elbow. Hopefully you'll get it on somebody, not the wrongdoer, obviously, because it's an extra aptitude point for getting. Every time you get a title on a unit, it's an extra aptitude point, and any one title can only go to any one unit, and any one unit can only get one title. So you don't necessarily want this wrongdoer, this particular wrongdoer. I don't want him to get any titles, but I don't want to get rid of him either because he's pretty adored by a few units. So I don't want anybody dejected. Although I will likely get rid of him later on in the game when new things open up or whatever. However it is that they're going to change the game with the new updates and stuff. So yeah. The Nimble Elbow, as I said, just feeding your people alcohol. Bulwark is by getting hits. By getting hit, if I recall correctly, or if I recall correctly, it's by getting hit a few times. So somebody who gets hit quite a bit. There's also a title for getting injured, which I don't have yet because none of my units really get hit to get injured, so I would need to force that title, just like these ones. The Miser is just a question of getting paid. You're going to get this automatically. You're actually going to get the Bulwark automatically too. On one of your units, one of these four is likely going to get the Bulwark pretty soon. I can't remember when we got it, but I'm pretty sure we got it on a Let's Play anyway, so you can even go back to that Let's Play and see precisely what it is to get it. The Miser, the same thing. We got it on a Let's Play. It's just a question of getting paid. So eventually a unit who's been getting paid will develop the Miser, and then nobody else can get it. The Cross-Eyed, I had explained that earlier. It's when a unit hits an ally 5 times with a shooting, and that doesn't need to be 5 times in the same battle, so just 5 times over the course of the game. I forced it. We had 2, if anybody remembers from the Let's Play, we had done 2, and then I forced it myself to get to the Cross-Eyed. I think I just killed some wolves in my own team or something. It's good to use animals, actually. That's something that I noticed when I was doing it. Capture some animals. Animals being bigger when they are in front of a unit, and you're not, directly adjacent to the animal. You actually back up so that your range is the highest range that you can get to actually hit the enemy unit. And your unit is right in front, who happens to be an animal, because he takes up more space, he's more likely to be hit. So it's actually a high percentage chance that you're going to hit the animal. Then you can just kill your own animals with your thing, and it doesn't really matter. You just capture some new animals until you get the Cross-Eyed, and then you don't care about it. And the Deft is just a question of making stuff. So the most likely thing that's going to happen in your game is that either the Cook or the Tinker is going to get the Deft pretty quickly. It's creating 100 items. If I recall correctly, once you create 100 items, the first unit to have created 100 items will get the Deft. So usually it's going to be your Cook, but it could also be the Tinker, depending on how much iron ore you collect early on and then transform into lockpicks. But most likely it's going to be your Cook, just from cooking stuff. Once you've got the Cook pot, you cook stuff, and he gets the Deft eventually. There's also the Braggart. The Braggart is the use of VP. That one is not functioning currently. I don't know why it's not functioning currently, but I've tested it just using 10 VP in a battle, straight up, by one unit, and it didn't work. It still didn't proc. So I don't know why it's not proccing. I've got it on a few, on every other save I've got it, but on this one, unfortunately, it hasn't proc yet. There's also the Deceiver, or the Deceitful, I think. The Deceitful, which is a certain number of backstabs. I haven't gotten it yet because I haven't backstabbed enough with either of my Rangers. And I didn't backstab enough with any of my units during normal play to get it. So. And there's also the one for injured. I can't remember how many injuries you need to have in order to proc it, but I'll have to check that out. There is a list that's on Discord, I believe, that shows that. There is one also on Steam, if I recall correctly. You could just do a discussion search for that in Steam, and you would probably be able to find it. And that's pretty much that in terms of the traits. Yeah, we've already gone through some of the traits. Tyrannical is a nice one, increasing the willpower if you've got if there's a prisoner in the troop. But that can, that costs extra food, so that's not necessarily great. This particular amount of units, 15. This is a perfect 15 with my 3 ponies. This is a great one in terms of the numbers that it has, because you have 14 food for each one of these, and a 4th. So that means that 4, which, technically your pork stew, your eel soup, and your mutton stew you'd want to always have on. And then once every 2 rests, you could use a beer-infused wolf ribs. You could use them more often than that, but a good way to go is just 1 every 2 rests, you use a beer-infused wolf ribs, so that your units never become drunkards from the beer-infused wolf ribs, which have beer in them, therefore they count as an alcohol as well as whatever they are. But it's good just, buying some apple pancakes or making some apple pancakes. And that way you have them every 2 rests. You're getting more out of your rest because you've reduced the fatigue gain. Or once every 2 rests, you're getting your extra 20% crit hit, which obviously, by the time you have these 90% with these guys, it's not necessarily huge, but it's an extra 20%. So up to 180, he's almost doing 3 times as much damage just from a crit. So, and the armors here, we've got level 9. So Paladin's Battle Plate is a great armor. It has 6% crit hit at level 9 2-star. As you may have seen from what my use, I usually use the Tracker's Breastplate for the Battle Plate of the Light. The other one is, do I have, yeah, here we go. Or the Outlaw's Chest Piece. These 3 armors are exactly the same. They have all the same stats at the same level, with the same number, with the same rarity, same quality. So they are exactly the same. It's an extra 9% of the crit hit, and then I can add these guys in. And this one is a great one to use on Arthur. Arthur is less affected by his critical damage than others. I mean, obviously I've got my 3 anyway, but either way, even without those 3, Arthur is less, you're counting less on him doing critical hits, on his critical damage output, just from the number of hits that he's doing. He's got a huge action economy from being a repo swordsman. So increasing that critical hit is actually better than increasing the critical damage, because more chances of doing a crit means more damage output that he's going to get. It could mean the difference between just, actually doing the crit could mean the difference between the Eternal Blower's killing as a last strike, or just causing an engagement and then forcing you to disengage again for another strike. So, I mean, that's just me personally. Somebody else might disagree with me. The numbers are so close anyway that it's not that much, but I'm going from 17 to 23, and 17 to 23 is quite a big jump in terms of how many crits I'm going to be doing. I've got it, I'm pretty close to a chance of critting every 4 hits, or every 4 attacks that I'm doing, and since I'm doing about 12 attacks with him per turn, it's a good thing to have. So I think that's mostly it. Oh yeah, one thing I remember when I was watching the previous one, my boar, if you remember, I didn't get rid of my boar, and then I got rid of him afterwards once I hired the new person. But boars are great to capture late game like this, because the boar, if I may not have shown it, but the boar himself has a thing. His level 8 skill, one of his level 8 skills is something about you being able to slaughter him. So his food consumption is reduced, and then you can actually slaughter him in camp. You go to camp and you go to this one, and instead of having capture, dismiss, it also has to slaughter the unit. And any boar that you slaughter in camp, any boar that you captured and slaughter in camp, gives you a lot of grease and a lot of boar meat. It, like the difference is quite huge. It's giving you like 13 boar meat for slaughtering him in camp, and like 20 grease or something like that, or even more than that, maybe 40 grease or something like that. It's actually quite huge what you're getting. So anybody who late game has really a really big party. I mean, I don't run huge parties myself, as you can see, with only 56 consumption. But somebody running like parties of 40 people, 50 people, it's long battles and whatever, and people can enjoy that. They're allowed. That's their prerogative. If they're having trouble, if you are running a very big team and you're having trouble with food, capture bears. Boars. Capture your boars instead of killing them. Just go after a boar pack and capture a bunch of them. Have a lot of rope always on you and just capture a bunch of boars. And once you capture them, as long as they are level 8, so you could start doing this at level 7 if you're meeting level 8 boars at level 7. You can already start doing this. Even potentially, you could hit level 6, grab a level 7 wrongdoer, hire him into your team, which would probably bump up your fights with animals to level 8. So at level 6, you could be fighting level 8 animals. And then you just capture a bunch of them while you're fighting. You capture a bunch of them, and then you get into camp, and you slaughter a lot of them. And by slaughtering them, you'll get a lot of food out of each one of them that you're slaughtering. A lot more. You're getting more food out of slaughtering one animal in camp than you're usually getting out of a whole battle, depending on the size of the team, obviously. But myself, I'd probably be getting approximately as much out of slaughtering one animal as I am out of doing a whole battle, and I'm getting a lot more grease. So it's a good way also to accumulate grease. As you can see, this is another one of the armors. I just wanted to show it I kept it in just to show it. It's an armor that has no increases, but it's more armor and more guard. And here you can see a 30% guard already at level 8. It would be at 36 plus whatever it is that you have in terms of the bandage shield, or in terms of the shield that you have, whichever shield it is that you're using. On these guys, I'm using a level 9. Level 9, 1 star, 20% guard, 66 armor. I could be using my higher guard one on Arthur and stuff, but as we've seen from other battles that I've done, I really enjoy having my bandage shields just to, when I meet full defense layers, I would like to have these just so that I can block off avenues, right? You just stick one of them there. You have 4 archers that wail into him, and you don't have to worry about it at all. He takes 1 damage each time. Alright, so I think that's pretty much it. I hope this wasn't too boring in terms of the information, but I just want to give some information on some of the mechanics and stuff, and some of the reasons why I do some of the things that I do, and the build up into a team like this. How to get these guys with their full things, and of course the names. He used to be Hercules, and I renamed him Hercules because he's a stronger unit. So he had quick, nimble, freed slave because he's a freed slave, but he was quick and nimble. Both of these guys are actually quick. One of them is tough, and the other one was nimble right from the start. I mean, nimble doesn't give me very much, but it gives me a bit, which increases my critical. As you can see, my critical. Even though here he doesn't even have any. Well, he doesn't have any critical hit here either. But that increase in critical from. It's also because I got the Tinker Novus. Okay, so 2% of it is from having my nimble, which is pretty big, really, when you think about it. I must have a percentage in there. I would think that I would have something because the 30 is not. I don't know. Maybe it's giving me 1 or 2% just from the decks. I'm not sure. Maybe I have also a full level increase in critical hit extra, plus my novice tinker. I gave him the bard so that I can start building up my bard. And there you go. So we'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot.